I played Super Mario Sunshine for the very first time. Yep, that's right. I played Super Mario Sunshine for the very first time. Yeah, I know what you're probably thinking. Super Mario Sunshine for the very first time. Well, that game's been out for quite a long time, since the GameCube era. It was the GameCube's 3D Mario that it got. Well, for the longest time, I didn't even know that game existed. You see, I grew up in the Wii era. That was the console that I had, and I grew up with as a kid. So Galaxy 1 and 2 were the games that I played, my 3D Mario. And alongside that, I also had the Nintendo DS and 3DS. So with the Nintendo DS, I also had Super Mario 64, the DS version. So those were the 3D Marios I always grew up with, playing multiple times as a kid. And for the longest time, like as a kid, I didn't even know Sunshine existed. One, I didn't even know the GameCube was a console. I knew like the Nintendo 64 and like the original NES and SNES were a thing, just from like my parents and like family members who grew up with that. But I guess the time that I grew up when, the GameCube didn't really matter all that much, and I guess that makes sense just based off of the time it came out. One, because the PlayStation 2 and Xbox came out at the time and pretty much outsold Nintendo, and Nintendo was kind of in the dumps at that point. It still sold decently well, but not very good for a Nintendo console from the past. Like obviously the SNES and the original NES that sold crazy numbers back in the day, and of course even the N64 sold still fairly well. But the GameCube was, I wouldn't say it was a flop, it just wasn't very successful, especially for Nintendo, because the next generation they came out with the Wii, and that's one of their best selling consoles of all time, until obviously the Nintendo Switch. Well, I didn't know the GameCube or Mario Sunshine was even a thing, didn't even know they existed, until I was, I don't know, maybe I was like 12, 13, I don't know, whenever the Switch first came out, whenever that was, it was like 2017, I think, is kind of when I kind of figured out what Mario Sunshine was, and that it was a game, and it did exist, and I never played it. And even though the Wii, the Wii I have still, the Wii was backwards compatible with GameCube games, and you could slide in the GameCube disc. Then again, I didn't even know the GameCube was a thing. I never even like remember seeing GameCube games on the shelves. All I remember was the Wii games. So Mario Sunshine wasn't even like a thing for me. So yeah, I could have played it on the Wii when I found that out a long time ago, because I still own my Wii, and I could have just bought Mario Sunshine and just slid it in there. But then again, I'd have to get a GameCube controller to play it, and then all of that. So it wasn't worth it. Well then, for Mario's 35th anniversary back in 2020, they released a 3D All-Stars pack, which came with Super Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy 1. I still never played Sunshine at the time. I just couldn't get myself to do it. I don't know why. When I did find out about Sunshine, it wasn't very talked about that much, and no one really cared for it, and it was kind of like the 3D Mario that a lot of people didn't like. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I just don't have to play it, even though I've played every other 3D Mario. And I never owned a Wii U when it came out at the time, so I never played Super Mario 3D World until it got re-released on the Switch with Bowser's Fury. That's another game, 3D Mario game, that we could talk about some other time, because it's definitely not my favorite 3D Mario game. But I finally had the time, had the money, and was like, well, I need to play Super Mario Sunshine. That's the one 3D Mario game I've still never played, and I need to play it sometime. So, I had to do it the original way, because we do it here on this channel. I wasn't just gonna buy a GameCube controller or just the Super Mario Sunshine disc. No. We don't do that. We have to play it how it was meant to be played. And that was, of course, on the good old GameCube. Yep, I had to buy a GameCube and all that. And of course, Super Mario Sunshine. Just so I could play it how it was supposed to be played originally. And honestly, there are a lot of things I could say, good and bad, about Super Mario Sunshine. But overall, you know, it's a good 3D Mario game. It's a good 3D platformer. It's definitely not the worst 3D Mario game. I mean, if you look back at 3D Land and 3D World, in my opinion, aren't the best 3D Mario games. But Super Mario Sunshine was an interesting one for sure. And especially when you go back from, obviously, Super Mario Odyssey, and most recently on the Switch 2, Donkey Kong Bonanza. This was an interesting game, for sure. The gameplay wise, you know, I had to get used to it, like controlling Mario at first. One, because he doesn't have his long jump anymore in this game like he does in 64, or even Galaxy 1 and 2, Odyssey. Like, he's always had the long jump. But this game, he doesn't have the long jump. Well, that's because he has this guy right here, the little flood pack he has, and that's Mario's companion for this game. And the mechanics for that are very interesting. And I at first was like, I don't really know how I feel about this. It was definitely weird at first, but I kind of got used to it. The whole jetpack and then the whole like water gun thing. And overall, it wasn't terrible. It just wasn't the best 3D platformer. Like I said, there's definitely other 3D platformers, especially Mario games, that are probably worse than this. And I don't know if this is going to get a lot of hate, because I know there are people that have nostalgia for this game and really do like this game and grew up with this game. And now, this is not to like really like bash and hate on the game, but Super Mario Sunshine, I don't know if this game was just like unfinished when they were developing it, because there are tons of like levels in here, like those little mini levels in this game that aren't the best and are kind of broken in my opinion. Now that might be changed and fixed on the Switch version, where the 3D All-Stars pack, I don't know if they fixed that or not. I have to go back and play that on the Switch. But on the original GameCube, there's a lot of flaws and a lot of brokenness in these levels and this gameplay. And you know, story-wise, you know, it's not bad. You know, it takes place on the little island, Isle Delfino. And, you know, Bowser Jr. is the Shadow Mario. There's also voice acting in the game, which kind of surprised me when I first turned it on. I was like the very first cutscene had voice acting, and I was like, what the crap? Mario game with voice acting? What? But, you know, honestly, I liked it. I honestly enjoyed it. I feel like they should bring that back, in my opinion. But the voice acting was kind of weird at times. You know, at the very beginning of the game, Mario literally goes to jail and then has cleanup duty as part of the game's story, and that's what he pretty much does the rest of the game, is cleaning up the rest of the island, because they mistake him for a other version of Mario, which is the Shadow Mario, which ends up being Bowser Jr. And Bowser Jr. thinks Princess Peach is his mom in the game, which kind of weird. But yeah, in the end, Bowser, of course, is the main villain at the end of the game. Spoiler alert, I guess. Didn't see that coming. But yeah, this game is pretty short too. It's definitely not the longest Mario game. Now, if you're 100%ing the game, that might take you a long time just because of how hard these dang levels are. Because of how broken some of they are. There's also the little blue coins that you have to collect if you're trying to 100% it. Of course, all of the shines you have to get. And overall, this game is definitely interesting for sure. It surprised me, and like I said, it's not the worst 3D Mario game, but it's definitely not the best. You know, I don't have any nostalgia for this game at all. I never grew up with it. Like I said, I grew up with the Wii, Galaxy 1 and 2. Those are my childhood games, as well as Mario 64 DS. But, just a sec. But the previous game before Sunshine on the N64 was Mario 64. And this goes down as one of the best 3D platformers in history, especially as one of the first 3D games, because that was the next step for Nintendo. And as a 3D platformer, Super Mario 64 still holds up to this day and is still played like to this day. And a lot of people don't really talk about Sunshine, and I know there are people out there that grew up with Sunshine and have nostalgia for it and would like to see Sunshine, well, I guess, be brought out in the light. Just because of how kind of forgotten this game is. And I think I wouldn't say it's for the better, because there are a lot of good things about this game, but then again, I don't know if this game was completely finished or not, because there's a lot of things in this game that don't hold up very well to this day, and especially if you go back and play it on the original GameCube. Definitely not for the new gen, if you know what I mean. But you know, I had to get the GameCube experience, of course, as a part of it, and so I enjoyed it. I will say that. It's not like this is the worst game ever. I enjoyed it. It was a good game overall, but there are a lot of things that kind of balance the good and the bad, if you know what I mean. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about this. Definitely, if you haven't played Super Mario Sunshine before yet, I definitely would recommend playing it. Especially if you want to play all the 3D Mario games. This is definitely a game to play and pick up. And I know there aren't very many ways to play it nowadays unless you get an original GameCube and the original Super Mario Sunshine, because the 3D All-Stars collection is like going for like $100 on like eBay and stuff, because they pulled it from the shelves. It was limited. And I think later down the line, if you have a Switch 2, Sunshine will be on the GameCube NSO, Nintendo Online, but that's if you have a Switch 2 as well. So it's like, this game is honestly really hard to play nowadays, and like I said, I didn't even know this game existed when I was a kid. So, but yeah, that's all I have to say about this. This is me playing Super Mario Sunshine for the first time. So yeah, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. We have a subscriber goal of hitting 500, and so it helps me out. It's super easy to do, not that hard. You just click a button. So yeah, see ya.